I'm just an old man now. What's left of my hair is white as ash, and the hands that were once strong now tremble just to hold a glass of water. They say age makes you forget things, but there are some memories time can never erase. There's a single sound that's echoed inside me since I was a boy. A sound that haunts even my dreams. My sister's cry. She was just a little girl, far too young to understand what was happening that morning. But I understood, and still, I couldn't do a thing. I saw her eyes searching for me, her voice calling out through tears, the pain on her face as strong. Hands tore us apart. That was our last goodbye. Since then, I've carried that memory like an open wound in my chest. And that's why I speak now. It's not easy, it's not pretty, but it needs to be told. Because if I stay silent, maybe no one will remember her. And the story I'm about to tell is not just mine. It belongs to all of us who lost something back then and who are still losing, even today, in silence. It was the last night I spent under the same roof as my family. Though none of us knew it at the time, I was just a boy, maybe 7, maybe 8 old enough to notice when something didn't feel right, but too young to truly grasp what was coming. That night, I remember the fire burning low, the smell of cornmeal cakes my mother made, and the sound of crickets singing outside the window. My sister sat beside me, her head resting on my shoulder, her little hand clinging to mine like she knew the world was about to change. She was always quiet, always watched more than she spoke. But that evening she kept asking questions where we would go when we got older, whether we would always stay together, whether Mama would still sing to us when our hair turned white. I told her yes to everything because I believed it. I didn't know then that truth is not something children are born into. It's something the world beats into you. My father sat in his chair, silent, staring into the flames. He had that look in his eyes, the one he wore when strangers came near the land. He was a strong man, not just in body, but in heart. And that night his strength felt like a wall between us and whatever danger. He sensed Mama kept her hands busy, always did when she was nervous. She kept humming that same melody her mother taught her, soft and trembling like her soul was trying to find somewhere safe to hide. I didn't ask questions. I just sat there, trying to make that moment last. But time never listens when you beg it to stay. I went to sleep with my sister in the little cot we shared. She curled up against me, whispering dreams about picking berries and running through tall grass. I held her tighter than usual. Something deep inside told me not to let go. That night, I woke to the sound of boots on dry dirt. Voices, not the kind that laughed with you or brought you bread. These were sharp voices, clipped and commanding. I peeked through the crack in the wall and saw torches, men, horses, mamas. Voice came next low, firm, like a prayer laced with fear. Don't make a sound, she whispered, pushing us behind the barrel in the corner. I saw her eyes. They didn't have tears, not yet. Just a kind of fire that burns when you're trying to hold your world together with bare hands. The door crashed open. They didn't knock. They didn't ask. I still remember the way those men looked at us like we weren't people, like we were things to be sorted and sold. One pointed at me, another at my father. Mama stood in front of us, arms wide, voice trembling. Please, she said. Just that one word that carried everything. I remember how fast it all happened after that. My father was pulled. Outside, Mama screamed. My sister clung to me, and I to her. But hands tore us apart like we were branches on a dying tree. She screamed my name, over and over. I screamed hers too, but it didn't matter. The night didn't care. The men didn't care. I watched her being taken in the other direction, her small body kicking, her cries echoing off the trees. Mama's wail filled the air, the kind of sound that breaks the sky, I thought. But a blow to the head blurred everything. When I came to, I was in the cart, tied next to others, strangers, crying children, broken men. But all I could think about was the look on my sister's face, the way her arms reached for me even as they disappeared into the dark. That was the last night I ever saw my home, the last night I felt warm without guilt, the last night I was a brother. That night was carved into me, not like a memory, but like a scar that never closes. And every night since, when the wind is just right and the stars are quiet, I can still hear her calling my name, still feel her hand in mine, still wish I had held on tighter. But the world has its own rules, and none of them were made for children like us. I still see her eyes, not the eyes of the little girl who used to follow me through the fields or sneak extra berries into my hands when mama wasn't looking. No, I see the eyes from that moment, the last moment when they tore us apart, wide, terrified, full of questions no one ever answered. That morning, the sun hadn't even risen. We traveled all night, our feet raw and our bodies numb. I held her hand the entire time, not just to protect her, but to keep myself from falling apart. She didn't speak much, just squeezed my fingers every now and then, like she was making sure I was still there. We arrived at a clearing where wagons stood like cages on wheels. Men in coats spoke names from a list while others pointed, whispered, and nodded. I didn't understand all the words, but I understood the silence, that heavy, suffocating silence of people who knew something terrible was about to happen and couldn't stop it. My sister leaned into me, her breath shaking. "We're staying together, right?" she whispered. I nodded. I had to. She was my responsibility, and even though I was just a boy myself, I believed I could keep that promise. Then a man shouted a number, another shouted a name. People were pushed forward, sorted like sacks of grain. The man pointed at me, then at someone else. He motioned for me to move. I didn't. My sister clung to me like ivy on a tree, her arms wrapped around my waist. "He's my brother," she cried. The man waved again, this time more forceful. I still didn't move. She dug her nails into my shirt. I could feel her heartbeat pounding through my back. And then they came, two men, taller than anyone I'd ever seen. One grabbed me by the shoulders, the other pulled at her arms. She screamed, a sound that didn't sound like her. It was deeper, desperate, like a piece of her was being ripped from the inside out. I kicked, I shouted, I bit, but they were stronger, much stronger. My sister's cries shattered the air. "Don't let go," she begged, "please." I reached for her, our fingers brushing one last time before being torn apart. That's the moment I see when I close my eyes, her tiny fingers stretching out for me, trembling, reaching into nothing, her face wet with tears, mouth open in a scream that seemed to go on forever. That's the moment time froze for me. Everything that came after moved, but I stayed stuck there, trapped in that scene like it was carved into stone. They dragged her away, and her voice faded with each step. I kept calling her name until my throat gave out. The men didn't even look at me. I was tossed into a cart like a sack of potatoes, and from that moment on, my world had a hole in it that nothing ever filled. I still hear that scream sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls through the trees. It sounds just like her voice, and I wonder, did she keep calling for me long after I was gone? Did she think I let her go? Because I didn't. I never did. Even now, I still hold her in my heart, tighter than I ever held her hand. I remember how her curls bounced when she ran, how she hummed when she was scared, how she always saved me the biggest piece of bread. But most of all, I remember how she looked at me in that final second, not angry, not blaming, but begging me to come back. I wish I could have torn through every chain, every wall, every man in my way. But I was just a boy, and boys don't win against giants. That's the truth no one tells you. I've spent my life searching for her face in the crowd, hoping that maybe, just maybe, she made it somewhere, that someone was kind to her, that someone sang to her the way Mama used to. But deep down, I know the world she was taken into. I know what they do to little girls with no one to protect them, and that's the weight I carry. Not just that we were torn apart, but that I couldn't stop it, that I couldn't keep my promise, that I let go. The sky that day was the color of dust, no sun, no warmth, just a pale stretch of gray above us as we were herded down a long road that didn't seem to end. My legs were already aching from the night before, but no one dared to stop. If you slowed down, they shouted. If you stumbled, they whipped the air behind your back until fear pushed you forward. I remember the way the dirt felt under my feet, hot, dry, biting at the soles like it wanted to remind me that this was real, that I was no longer home. My hands were still raw from holding on too tightly, not to anything physical, but to the memory of her, my sister, her cries, her tiny hands slipping from mine. I kept seeing her everywhere, every little girl I passed, every quiet sob I heard. I thought it was her. My mind played tricks on me, whispering hope when there was none. The older man walking beside me coughed with each step, his breath thin and broken. He looked down at me once, just once, and said, "Keep your head down, keep your heart quiet." I didn't understand what he meant, but I never forgot those words. I tried not to cry. The others were silent too, men, women, children all, swallowed by the same silence, like we had agreed to suffer together without sound. Only the chain spoke, clinking with every step, every stumble. We walked through forests and fields, across rivers where the water tempted us to throw ourselves in and end it all. I saw one man do just that. He broke away, ran toward the edge, but he didn't make it far. The sound of the shot was sharp and final. No one looked, not even the birds. I held onto a piece of fabric I'd torn from my sister's dress. It was all I had left of her. I kept it tucked in my fist like a secret only I was allowed to carry. I didn't sleep. Even when we stopped, I was afraid of dreaming, afraid I'd see her again and wake up to this nightmare. At night, the stars were the only kind thing above us. They didn't judge. They didn't order or whip. They just watched. I used to think they were the eyes of people who had escaped this world and now watched over those still trapped. I hope one of those stars was her. One night, while most were resting or pretending to, I heard someone humming, soft, broken. It was a song Mama used to sing. My chest ached. I turned to see an older woman, rocking back and forth, her eyes closed, her lips moving like she was praying. I sat closer, listening. That melody carried me back to the nights on the floor of our cabin, my sister sleeping beside me, Mama singing by the fire. I cried quietly, letting the tears fall where no one could see. That's when I realized the journey wasn't just through land. It was through pain, memory, and the slow death of everything I knew. Days turned into weeks. My feet blistered, then bled, then hardened. Hunger became normal. Thirst was a game of luck. We learned to swallow air and pretend it was food. I counted steps. I counted breaths. I counted stars. Anything to keep my mind from breaking. The younger children didn't last. Some fell behind. Others simply stopped moving. We weren't allowed to mourn them. Their names weren't spoken. They disappeared the way smoke leaves a fire fast, final and forgotten by those who didn't care. I never forgot, though. Every soul I passed became a part of the weight I carried, not just in my body, but in my spirit. And when we finally arrived wherever there was, I wasn't the same boy. I had no words left, only silence, only a heart full of ghosts. So if you're still listening, if my voice hasn't been buried beneath the noise of the world, please subscribe so someone out there knows we were here, that we mattered. They didn't tell us where we were going. They never spoke to us unless it was to give an order or strike us silent. So when the cart finally stopped and we were pulled from it like cargo, I had no idea where I stood, but I remember the smell, the thick, bitter scent of sweat, hay, and blood that hung in the air like it had lived there for years. It wasn't a place built for people. It was a place built to break them. The ground was hard-packed dirt, scattered with straw and waste. Wooden buildings stood crooked in the distant sheds, stables, houses with peeling white walls, fences, ran in all directions, tall enough to remind you there was no way out. Everything was dry, brittle, like even the earth had given up. We were lined up and looked over, one by one. They didn't ask our names. They looked at our arms, our backs, our teeth, as if we were livestock. One man prodded my ribs and muttered something to the one beside him. They laughed. I didn't know what they said, but I knew I didn't belong to myself anymore. They handed me to a man with eyes like ice. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just pointed, and I followed. Behind the house was a long field, tools hung on, nails, and rows of other boys and men moved like ghosts, silent and tired. No one looked up. That was the first lesson: don't look up. Keep your eyes on the ground, your hands moving, your mouth shut. I didn't even get to speak to the others from the cart. We were separated like seeds tossed into the wind, scattered and alone. My first night there, I slept in a small wooden hut with 5 other boys. The floor was dirt, the roof leaked when it rained, and the walls groaned in the wind like they didn't want to be there either. No one talked much. One boy cried in his sleep, another stared at the wall for hours without blinking. I found a corner and curled into myself, still holding that torn piece of my sister's dress. The work started before dawn. A bell rang, and we moved, always moving. We were taught how to plant, how to cut, how to carry more than our bodies could bear. If you didn't move fast enough, they reminded you with rope, with wood, with whatever was in reach. I remember the weight of the sack they gave me, heavier than my own bones, and the sun never showed mercy. It burned until your skin cracked, until your breath came in gasps, until you forgot what it meant to feel cool again. There was no water unless they gave it, no rest unless they allowed it, and even then, it wasn't kindness, it was control. I met an old man there, gray-bearded and hollow-eyed. He never told me his name, but he would hum sometimes while he worked, not loud, just low enough for the earth to hear. I asked him once why he did it. He said music was the only thing they hadn't taken. They can chain your hands, he whispered, but not your soul, not unless you let them. I started humming to after that, not songs I knew, but sounds from deep inside, sounds that reminded me I was still human. At night, I lay awake thinking of my sister. I wondered if she was nearby, in another field, another hut. I tried to listen for her voice, but the night was full of other cries, other prayers, and I didn't know which ones were hers. There were moments I thought I saw her shadows in the distance, a shape in the mist, but it was always someone else, and every time, my heart broke all over again. One evening, during a storm, a bolt of lightning lit up the sky, and for a split second, I saw the whole place from the window of the hut. The fences, the fields, the rows of bodies bent over like broken trees. It looked like a cage for souls. That's when I understood this place wasn't just meant to hold us. It was meant to erase us, our names, our histories, our dreams. They wanted us to forget we were ever anything else. But I remembered, every night I remembered. That's how I survived, by refusing to let go of who I had been before they brought me here, by holding on to my sister's laugh, my mama's song, my father's quiet strength. That place tried to take everything from me, but it didn't take that. There were two kinds of pain I came to know in that place. The pain of remembering and the pain of forgetting. Both cut deep, but in different ways. Remembering meant carrying everything with you, every voice, every smell, every goodbye. It meant waking each morning with the weight of what was taken, which you'd never see again. But forgetting felt like betrayal, like letting them win, like killing the only pieces of my life that were still mine. I fought to hold on to the sound of her laugh, the way her small hand fit in mine, the way mama would hush her, with a hum when the night got too loud. But with each day, each hour under that sun, those memories began to slip, not all at once, but slowly, like sand through cracked fingers. One morning, I realized I couldn't remember the shape of my father's voice. I tried to mimic it, say words he used to say, but they came out strange, wrong. It scared me more than any whip ever could. If I lost his voice, what else would I forget next? There was a boy who slept beside me in the hut, no older than my sister had been. His eyes were always red, not from crying but from holding it in. One night, he asked me, "Do you think they remember?" U.S. I didn't know who he meant to our families, the world, God. I just shook my head, not because I didn't believe it, but because I didn't want to speak the lie out loud. He fell asleep clutching a piece of rope like it was something sacred. In the morning, he was gone. No one said his name. No one even looked at the empty space where he used to lay. That's how things went. Names vanished, faces blurred, stories died quiet deaths, and we kept walking, working, breathing, if that's what you could call it. But in the corners of my mind, I tried to build a place where nothing could be erased. I'd close my eyes and picture the cabin we used to live in, the way the light spilled through the cracks in the wall, the creak of the wooden floor when Papa came in from the fields. I'd imagine my sister's face as she held up a wildflower and told me it was for Mama. I clung to those visions like they were real, like if I remembered hard enough, maybe the memories would grow roots and hold me in place. But memory came with punishment too. It made you slow, distracted. I got hit once for pausing too long during work. My hands had frozen because I saw a girl in the distance with braids like my sister. It wasn't her. Of course, it never was. But my heart couldn't tell the difference. The blow knocked me to the ground. But it wasn't the pain that made me cry, it was the guilt. I'd looked too long, hoped too hard, and hope in that place was dangerous. I saw men go mad from it. One used to sing a lullaby every night, the same one over and over, until his voice cracked and bled. One day, he stopped singing. The next, he tried to run. They caught him. What they did to him, it wasn't just to punish him, it was to teach us what forgetting looked like. The others stopped humming after that, but I didn't, quietly, in whispers, sometimes only in my thoughts. I kept the songs alive, songs Mama sang, rhythms Papa clapped on the table, even the nonsense tunes my sister made up when we played in the grass. They were mine, and through them, I remembered, still. There were nights when forgetting felt easier, nights when the ache in my chest got too heavy, and I thought maybe letting go would help me breathe. Maybe if I stopped thinking about her, the pain would fade. But that was a lie. Forgetting didn't heal it, hollowed. It turned people into shadows of themselves. I saw it happen. Slowly, to the strongest ones, they stopped telling stories, stopped asking questions. One day, their eyes just emptied, like the soul had stepped out and left the body behind. I feared that more than death. So I chose pain. I chose to carry the sharp edge of memory, even when it cut me from the inside, because at least it proved I was still alive. At least it meant I hadn't given them everything. I used to trace her name in the dirt when no one was watching, over and over, just her name. I didn't speak it aloud, but I carved it into the earth like a prayer. I imagined if I kept writing it, if I never stopped, maybe the wind would carry it to her, maybe she'd feel it, maybe she'd remember me too. Time is a strange thing. They say it heals. They say it softens memory, blurs pain, gives space for something new to grow. But that's not how it happened for me. Time didn't heal anything. It just made the silence louder, made the absence heavier, made me older. That place where they took us, where they worked us, where they tried to erase us, it didn't kill me. Not fully, but it took pieces of me I never got back. The seasons changed, fields grew and emptied. Faces came and went, some were sold, some buried in the dirt behind the sheds. No marker, no prayer. I grew taller, my voice deepened, my hands grew calloused, my back bent, and through it all, I never saw her again, my sister. The days turned into years, and still, I waited for her face to appear in the crowd. I thought maybe she'd find me, or I'd find her. Maybe one day, someone would whisper her name, or mention the girl with eyes like mine. But no one ever did. She was gone in a way that made no noise, and somehow, that silence was louder than any scream. I held on to every scrap of memory like it was gold. I remembered the gap in her teeth when she smiled, the way she hated wearing shoes, the way she called me brother because she couldn't say brother right. Sometimes, I'd sit in the corner of the hut and repeat that word to myself, just to keep it alive. Brother, over and over, until someone shouted at me to be quiet, but time kept going. It didn't wait for me. My hair turned coarse, my shoulders grew broad. I was no longer a boy searching for his sister. I was a man surviving the days. I stopped crying, not because I didn't feel it, but because the tears dried up. My grief turned into something harder, something quiet and sharp. A blade I kept in my chest, hidden, but always pressing against my heart. I saw people fall in love, even in that place. I saw them steal kisses behind barns, whisper promises under moonlight. I tried once, with a girl who had eyes that reminded me of the river near our home. She touched my hand and said I had a kind face, but I couldn't love her every time I looked at her. I saw the space where my sister should have been, where my family should have stood. I pulled away. She didn't ask why. She just looked at me with that tired kind of knowing, like we were all too broken to fix each other eventually. I stopped hoping she'd return, not because I stopped loving her, but because hope started to rot. It became a wound that refused to close, so I buried it. I buried it like the others I had watched get lowered into shallow graves. No name, just earth and silence. Still, the pain stayed, even when I stopped speaking of her, even when I stopped drawing her name in the dirt. It lived inside me like a second heartbeat. At night, it pulsed in my ears, in the wind, in the creak of wood and the hush of trees. Some days, I thought I saw her, a girl in a passing wagon, a figure across the fields. My heart would leap, my breath would catch, but it was never her, and each time, I died a little more inside. I started to forget the sound of her voice. That was the hardest part. it didn't leave all at once. It faded, slowly, like a song you used to know but can't quite hum anymore. I'd sit in silence, trying to recall it. Just one word, just one no, but nothing came. I'd scream into my hands just to hear something, anything, but her voice was gone, and with it, part of me disappeared too. I watched myself become someone else. Not by choice, by force. I learned how to survive, how to hide parts of me, how to speak when spoken to, and how to look down when ordered. I played the part they expected, but inside, I was still that boy, still clinging to the image of her, still trying to remember, still trying not to forget. Time moved forward. I saw the world start to shift. Whispers of freedom, stories of men fighting to change things. But even then, even when others talked about escape or rebellion, I stayed quiet, because my freedom wouldn't be real without her. What good was it to be free if she was still lost? If she was gone? That's the part they don't talk about. They speak of freedom like it's an ending. But for me, it was just another chapter of absence, of walking in a world where the one person who knew your laughter, your fears, your name, no longer walks beside you. So yes, time passed, but the pain, it stayed. It always stayed. I don't know how many years I've lived. I stopped counting after freedom came, because even then, the day still felt heavy. I walk slower now. My knees ache in the cold, and my hands don't hold things like they used to. But my mind still carries everything. Not just what was done to me, but the people I loved, the faces I lost, the names the world forgot. I tell these stories not because I want pity, and not because I want anyone to cry for me. I tell them because someone has to remember, because memory is the only grave we're allowed to visit. I never found her, not once. In all these years, I've looked into every crowd, every passing wagon, every set of eyes I could bear to hold, but her face never came back to me. I used to think maybe she had died soon after we were parted, that maybe she was spared the long suffering. Other times, I imagined she lived, that maybe she found someone kind, that maybe she hummed Mama's song to her own children, that maybe she told them about her brother once, even if she didn't remember my name. I have nothing left from that time, no paper, no picture, just a piece of cloth that I keep tucked near my heart, worn and faded, the last thread of her that the world couldn't take. I've had moments of peace, sitting by a quiet river, hearing birds sing, watching children laugh in the distance. But even in peace, there is an echo. Even in laughter, there's a shadow, the kind of grief that settles deep, not loud, but constant like a heartbeat you never forget. They used to say we were less than human, that we didn't feel like others, but I felt everything. I still do. I remember the warmth of Mama's hands, the steadiness of Papa's voice, the way my sister looked at me like I could protect her from anything. And I remember the silence that followed when I couldn't. That silence grew into me, became a part of my breath, a companion I never chose, but learned to live with. I don't know who you are, the one listening now. Maybe you're young, maybe you're old, maybe you've known sorrow, or maybe you've only heard about it in passing. But if you've stayed this long, if my voice reached you, then please carry this story with you. Speak of us when you can. Whisper our names when the night is still. Let your children know we were here. Let your heart hold space for those who vanish without farewell. That's all I ask, that we not be erased, that we not be buried beneath time and silence. I've walked through the seasons of my life carrying shadows no one else could see. Each day brought a new weight, some visible in scars on my skin, others hidden in the quiet spaces of my soul. I learned that the world could break your body, But sometimes, the hardest battle was keeping your spirit alive. The memories I hold are both a blessing and a curse. They remind me of love lost and the strength I never knew I had. They tell of a girl with eyes like the morning sun, a mother's soft hands, and a father's unspoken courage. But they also speak of chains, silence, and a world that tried to make me forget who I was. I've told this story many times now, to whoever would listen, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in tears, and each time, I hope it reaches someone who needs to hear it, someone who will understand that behind every face erased, there was a life filled with dreams and fear. Behind every name forgotten, there was a soul that loved and hoped. I leave this story not as a burden, but as a gift, a reminder that even in the darkest places, the human heart endures. That memory can be an act of resistance. That speaking truth, no matter how painful, is a way to honor those who cannot speak for themselves. So if these words meant something to you, if you felt even a piece of what I carried all these years, then stay with me a while longer. Subscribe, if only to keep this flame lit. There's more waiting for you in the playlist. I'll be right there still speaking, still remembering until someone listens.